National Chess Master Rats here to continue my series on the Nimzovitch defense. This particular video will deal with the variation I call the Fred, where white plays 2 knight f3 and black employs f5, and this has to do with the variations where white declines the gambit, does not take on f5. And this video was actually made back in November as a private lesson for one of my students, and you can barely hear him on this video, but that's not important. You'll hear me. And I pretty much cover all the variations of what to do when white declines the gambit. I believe that 2 knight f3 is not white's best move in this position simply because he can do better playing a main line. But usually white doesn't know this line and falls back on 2 knight f3. If you don't want to play the Fred, you can do quite well with e5. If you're prepared, you should have comfortable equality. Anyway, the debate is raging online on this whole Fred, and I'm happy to have been a part of this. And all I'm doing is sharing all my years of experience with this opening. And I'm not trying to say this is the opening you should play. I'm putting it out there and letting you decide. I think it's one opening that will certainly surprise your opponent, give you a number of upset wins that you might not get otherwise. You can go learn a better opening when you become a master. But I've certainly had fun with it in the 20 plus years I've been using it, and my objective is to share everything I can on everything about the Nimzovitch defense. Anyway, it's got a lively discussion lately online. I've run into a few critics of it, and yeah, the opening, if white plays it absolutely accurately, could give black some problems. Maybe there is a refutation just accepting the gambit. But how can white expect to find that when he's trying to solve it over the board? If he's ELO rated 1200 to 2000, well, we can't count on that. So again, the Fred is something that you can try on your own if you like. Anyway, I'm going to stop this live commentary here on March 13th and let the video resume, and I'm copying the video. Anyway, enjoy, and good chess to you all. And I just haven't had a chance to make a video. I have not had a chance to make a video of the Fred declined, but I can. You'll be the only one in possession of it because I don't make these public. Black should be fine out of the Fred decline, and I'll cover the main themes. How are they declining? Where you're running into trouble? What move do you run into that's not good? Okay. Do you run into anything else?
Just some basic, just knight c3. Nothing too scary. It just always seems when I was playing blitz, it just seemed like I always got hit upside the head with it because I just hadn't thought it through yet.
Okay. Well, there's several ways to decline this gambit as white, and those are 2 ways. You didn't mention a couple others, d3 and e5. I've run into all. Okay, I have a few things to show you on all of these. I'm gonna hold bishop c4 back, and d3. I'm gonna hold those back, but I'm gonna get knight c3 out of the way first. Now, I'm trying to think where I posted it. I ran into knight c3 in Las Vegas back in 1993, and I was trying to remember where I posted the PGN. I mean, I'm not organized. I don't have most of my games are still on score sheets. I know where to look. I know who I played. Some low-rated master, and he played knight c3, and I just killed him. It was a really, really good game on my part. But what you do with this is you're gonna go into the Schliemann defense by transposition, and you have to step carefully. Now what was the guy's name? I'll tell you where I posted it. You're going to go, okay, I'll tell you where you can find the game score. Remember this. Go into the video lessons group, go into Vote Chess, completed games. We played a team match against Philippines' finest chess club, and we played the Fred against them. And I posted the game in the notes. You have to look at the each move, the notes we wrote. I don't remember when I posted it, but probably after move 3, because that's when white played knight c3.
Okay.
All right, and we killed him. They didn't go into the line the guy did. But what you do, you have to be careful. Let me think. Knight, you take here. Now, when the knight takes, you're able to get d5 in. And now if knight g3, again, like I say, you have to be careful. You want to play e5 right away. And there's a lot that particular match, I say. There is a lot of suggestions about what to do with this. So for the most part, we can bypass that, and you can collect this on your own. See, e5, I don't remember what I played in that game. If you don't play e5, white may play d4, and you get this backward pawn, but that shouldn't be a problem. Black will get a backward pawn in the open file a lot in the Fred declined. But I'm saying, you have to be careful. Here's like if you play e5 right now, bishop g4, now e5 is hanging, okay? But you have a pin, and now you have to, as I say, you have to be careful. h3 comes, and now you need to take, and I think black's okay here. I think black's okay in this position. You have given up the bishop pair, but look at what you've got. You've got free development, and you've got free development. You've got the F file. How's white going to continue? Well, let's try D3. Now, what a good place. You have two good squares for this bishop. You can put it on D6. It's good there, although it might hang D5 later to bishop G5, or you can put it on C5. This is a good square for it. Let's just try bishop C5, and we're going to make developing moves for white, and then you castle, and you don't care so much if white puts his bishop here. You're just going to kick it, and you're happy if he takes, because all of a sudden you're getting some play on the F file. Black's totally equalized, and that's what you want. You're not getting killed in this. Okay, there's, like I say, to save you time, there's more analysis in that thread about the knight c3 line, and we ended up going for something else. I'm trying to remember. The team wanted to try some other idea, and maybe I stopped making suggestions. I just let the team pick, and what they picked was fine. But let's look at d5 just a little bit more. The knight can go back to c3, but this shouldn't be a problem because now you get e5 in, and bishop b5 doesn't have as much sting anymore. Let's see, h3. Well, let's see, maybe it does. See, now e5 is going to drop, but that doesn't necessarily have to be a problem, because if you take, well, I guess it is a problem. If you take you can take this, but now whoops, dang it. You can take this, and now d5 is hanging because the knight's on it. You've got to be very careful here, simply because you're behind in development. Now, I don't think white has enough with the sacrifice, but let's see. You got to watch out. Here comes a check. See, whoops, and now g6 doesn't work because of the pin. Queen e5 check is playable. So let's try knight f6 here. Black should be okay. You do give up the bishop pair in some instances. In some instances, you're going to go right into a Schliemann, and maybe that's what it is. I think you avoid most of the main lines. but the key is to play d5 in this position. Now you can play e5 also. Now you're delaying playing d5. You can go ahead and play e5 and then follow up with knight f6 and continue your play. White can't play bishop c4 in this line because he runs into d5. Now he gets, if bishop b5, you can't play d5 here because of, well, you can. Let's see, d5. It's awful risky for white to sacrifice a piece here. I don't think he can get away with it, but maybe he can. You got to be very careful. Like I say, there's some tricks in here. This check is annoying. G6, knight takes, knight f6. This gets a little tricky here. Queen h4. Your rook's loose. You can give it up by taking on g6, but I don't think that's any good. Well, maybe it's okay. Let's see. You're getting 2 pieces for the rook. Oops. This should be okay for black. Having 2 pieces for the rook, the bishop will come to. You don't care if white doubles your pawns. White's got nothing to attack. You're going to secure your king side and then castle long, and you've got a good game. I just know, I don't have everything worked out like in a format. I've run into all of these, and I've tried all of these in various blitz games. I don't have. That's one reason why I haven't made another video, because I haven't sorted out all of the hundreds of blitz games and bullet games I've played the Fred. That you don't have to play d5. Once again, you can fall back on just development, and if white wants to win a pawn, well, let's see. If white wants to try to win a pawn, he's got to be careful. E5 is hanging, but so is e4. You can take with the d pawn to activate the bishop, and if knight takes, you have an isolated e pawn, but you've got free development, and you've got the bishop pair, and you're ready to double up white's pawns. You don't have to take with the d pawn. Black has lots of luxuries here. You can take with the. Now let's see. Let's try to do this like that trap in the Petrov. Right? You have to be careful here. But you have a luxury, and the luxury is you're up a piece. You don't try to save your piece, but you can for a move. Let's see, d5. Well, the problem with d5 is you're up a piece. Black has to win back. White has to win back his piece. He doesn't have time to play knight takes c6. d3. Now you can't move the knight, but you just close. Let's see. Let's go attack the knight. Whoops, that doesn't attack the knight. My mouse has been giving me trouble this morning. Okay, now if he takes your knight, you take his knight. So, there's, like I say, there's a lot in here. I want to make sure I cover all the bases. But e5 is a perfectly playable move. I didn't cover d4. You don't need to fear d4. This is okay. He's on this now. Do you want to take it? Well, there's nothing making you take it. Let's tempo that knight right now. Okay. Now we go into some similar position similar to before, except white's able to get e4 in that he wasn't able to get in before. White doesn't have. Well, let's see. Can white take this pawn? That's a good question. My feeling is he can't, because now queen h5 check is met by knight g6. So now you get away with taking a pawn or winning a piece. And now notice that this pawn on e5 is in white's way. White can't check on e5. So the bottom line is there's no direct way for white to exploit the black position. And let's just look for a second. Let's go back. I'm going to reset it and get rid of all these notes just to keep it clean. Okay. Let's look. Whoops. I want to do it this way. Let's look at a Schliemann where okay. Here's your Schliemann. How is white going to react to this? Well, one move is knight c3. Okay. And let's see. So this is kind of, once again, I think this is a line. You have to be very careful here. Knight takes e5 comes in, and I don't know. Let's see. Maybe I'm doing something wrong here. I don't know. Maybe you don't have. Well, knight f6 gains a tempo. I'm not sure if this is good or bad for white. I don't remember all the analysis to it. Let's see, because I was saying after queen h4, just take this, okay? So you'll have to do a little research on the Schliemann. I know this is a position, but what happens? There's a difference between the way when you go about this with the Fred is when you go about it with the Schliemann. The difference is white doesn't get it. Is you've delayed e5, and this bishop is still on f1. That's the main difference. So you don't have to necessarily go into the mainline Schliemann where this knight takes e5 is possible. So let's look at this again, then we can move on to another line. So white can try knight g5. That doesn't really do him any good. You'll just bring your knight out and let him take on e4. You're not trying to save your pawn. Although you could maybe even conceivably play d5, but that has risks. The risk is that white will just say, okay, fine, I'll play a pawn down and I'll get development. And now you got all kinds of new problems to solve. You don't have time for h6 because queen h5 check's a killer, and white's, and if you take this pawn, white develops a piece. So you don't want to try to hang on to the pawn. You just want to give it back, and the way to give it back is to try to make exchanges that help your position. Now, if white stops to take the pawn back, now's a good time to play d5, okay? And now you don't care if he takes. Black has got full equality here. As a matter of fact, if white plays d4, black's gained a tempo. Now, the pawn on f6, it might not be a move you want to play, but black's not any way, shape, or form for worse. Bishop b4. The idea is to bring the bishop back to b6 to pressure d4. Okay. You don't care if white tries to trade queens. You let him. And now bishop d3. Now let's see. You got to be careful you don't run into trouble if you castle. This might be a position where you try to castle long. It says one drawback with the pawn going up to f6 is it weakens g6. And now you castle. Now you're getting ready to castle queenside. So with incorrect play, you can get in trouble. With careful play, you should hold your own. Okay, that pretty much wipes out knight c3. Okay, I don't think d3 is any good for white. Don't take on e4. Just go ahead with your development and play e5. Okay. You don't want to. The reason you don't want to take on e4 is you don't want to activate the bishop on f1. White's imprisoned it. Let it stay there. If he takes this pawn, just continue with your development. You know, it can become reverse King's Gambit style. White could try to play g4 here. Okay. Well, there's not much you can do about that except hammer him back. And it's reverse King's Gambit, but there's a subtle difference. This knight's on f3, and a lot of times it isn't there for black. This seems to work. So white doesn't really usually have time for g4 here. Black's got everything he wants out of this. So, like I say, d3 is not a major concern. Which brings us back to okay, now you've got this move. Okay, I don't think that's any good, and I'll show you why. As I recall, you just simply take this pawn. Now, the question is, can white do anything with this? Well, you got a tempo on that knight right now that has to be dealt with. Okay, so let's try to get aggressive with white. Let's offer a piece and see if we can do anything. The purpose of offering the piece is that you want to get queen h5 check in. But what's white's follow-up? If he tries queen d5, you just play pawn e6 and you're going to stay a piece ahead. So white needs to deal with the threat on his knight. What's left? We know that knight e5 doesn't work. Let's try knight g5. Okay, what about d5 right now? Now the bishop is tempoed. What does white do? Well, if he's trying to refute this, he's going to check. But what's he have to show for it? Okay, now the queen's in danger. Let's put it on h4. Now, there's a free piece if you want it, right? It's right there. I don't think white has enough. So I don't think bishop c4 is a good move at all. It shouldn't give you any trouble. You're going to get d5 in, and you gain this tempo. The more critical lines come with e5. And I'm not sure how much of this I've shared, but black should be okay out of this. But you have to step carefully, and I'll show you why in a moment. The move to play is d6. Now there's three variations in this position that we'll have to go over. The first one, what do you think the three are?
I would say, well, e takes d.
Right, that's one of them.
E6 doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, it's not a good move.
D4.
Yeah, d4.
So d4, e takes, and well, you could play bishop b5.
Yeah, those are the three lines, and each one has its own styles. I played a game back in February or March. I'm pretty sure it opened like this. Black has absolutely nothing to fear against taking. You take back with the d pawn, and the point is, eventually, when white gets this, tries to get the bishop to d4 or c4 to try to exploit it, eventually you're going to get d5 in. White can't stop that. So I've run into d4. Now you just develop. Okay. And again, anytime white plays bishop c4, you're going to get d5 in. You give up e5 as a result, but white can't do anything with it. You have e4. This is also cementing your position in on e4. So I've run into d5, and now you're fine just playing your knight to e5. And white can't exploit it. He can create an imbalance in the pawn structure, but this is certainly not a refutation. All it's done is create an imbalance. Black is ahead in development. Black has better central control than white does. White has nothing to develop. What's he going to do? Check? Okay, well, fine. Let him check. If he takes, hey, we developed our queen. Now we have a threat on. Now we have a threat on d5. If knight c3, I might consider castling long and winning that thing. So now maybe white feels obligated to play c4. Well, hey, this is fine. Bishop c5. You don't have to play the check. Bishop c5. Now you're on this f2 square. 3 pieces developed to none for whites. Like I say, white really can't refute this opening. It's good. It's a good opening, and declining it is black has absolutely nothing to fear. So let me illustrate just a little bit more. Okay, eventually this comes in, and I say eventually you're going to get d5 in. Let's just get it in now. Let's put the bishop on b3, and you do have to be a little careful here. Like for instance, if knight c3, you have to make sure that you don't get in a situation where you can't take back because of the pin. You can't play knight e4 now because d5 is not defended. So you've got to kind of wiggle out of this a little bit. And let's see. One way is break the pin right. Whoops. I didn't want to play bishop e3. I started to pull it back when I play it. One way is to break the pin right now. Now you're creating a flight square for your bishop because you want to play the bishop to e6. And let's develop for white. And now, like I say, there's this bishop e6, rook e1. I suppose white could play rook e1 a move earlier. We'll come back on that. Now, one drawback with the bishop on g5 is it takes knight g5 away. But this bishop could have gone to f4. But the long and short of it is you're going to eventually get knight e4 in. And you don't really need to fear a knight e5 too much. I can dig up, I don't know where it would take. I have to step away from the computer. I could find the game I played back in May. It was a game 45 against a player rated just over 2,000, and he just let me do everything I wanted. And then he tried to complicate things and sacrifice a piece, and I just refuted it. But you shouldn't fear him taking that pawn because you're going to get d5 in and eventually use the e4 square. So let's see. Try to get to the right place on the PGN. Come on. Is it lagging? Well, I'm just going to reset it. It's lagging because it's not doing anything. There it goes. Okay. E4. Knight c6. Knight f3. F5. E5. D6. Now, d4, you don't have to fear this move either. You take. And you displace the white king from castling. And then you play e6. Now, black looks a little cramped. The bishop on c8 looks pretty crummy. But guess what? There's nothing white can do about it. Black will just get a free game. Bishop b5. I've had this played. Bishop d7, and let's suppose white tries playing for tricks. Okay, the idea here is that white wants to be able to take on e6 after he takes this off, right? So, got the wrong ideas. Well, black doesn't need to fear this. First step, develop a rook. Now, if white takes the knight, you have a discover check, right? Okay, so let's bring the king out. Now let's just kick that knight out of there. Let's see. Let's look at this. Bishop takes. You can just simply take with the pawn and let them have the double pawns. Or accept the double pawns because you've got the bishop pair, and you've got a reasonable outpost that will invite white to play c4, which will kind of weaken d4 and d3 a little bit. You can go ahead and you can start playing against e5. Okay, g5 here. White's not in a position to exploit the double pawns. Well, yeah, he can attack this pawn, so what? Just move it out of the way. Let white get developed. Like I said, let him get it developed. Now this knight goes d7, and you've got two good squares that knight's going to. It can go to g6 and pressure e5, or it can go to d5. Either one is fine. Rook d2. Rather than going for the pawn, I prefer, that pawn's going to stay weak. Let's just play knight d5. And thank you for undoubling my pawns. And black's got the two bishops and absolutely nothing to fear. Okay. So you get play against the pawn on e5 in a lot of themes, even if white doesn't try to exploit black's position like I showed you. I was playing knight g5, and where did the knight end up on? It ended up back on f3. So let's try something else for white here. Let's develop a knight. Well, you can, whoops, wrong arrow. You can put the bishop on c5 and hit that pawn right now. Yeah, that's a good square for the bishop. Okay, king e2. Now we develop another piece. Okay, now look, black's got all four minors out. White doesn't. Black can castle either side. What's weak in black's position? The only weak square really is e6, and white is not poised to exploit it. Let's try to exploit it. We can reach an infinite number of variations. I'm just basically showing you that you can refute this system. Okay, so let's suppose he tries bishop c4. Okay. Now the idea here is white wants to play knight g5. Well, you have a good move here. Just simply h6. Let's keep him out of there. Now the plan is to play g5 and start working on this pawn. Knight here and here. Okay, now suppose white stops. Whoops, yeah, that's right. Suppose white decides, well, I'm going to stop at g5. Well, fine. I don't care. I'll just go about my business and develop pieces. There's bishop c5 again. Okay, that kind of forces the king up here, and I'll play the careful, cautious g6. And the reason, why do you think I'm playing g6?
Well, if he plays h5, then you can play g5.
Well, then he gets to take en passant. I'm playing g6 to stop him from playing h5, because now if he does it, I will play here. Now, once again, black has a couple of weak squares, but white can't exploit them. It's impossible for white to exploit the black squares. So black is fully equalized, and that's what we're looking for is black. And yet we're finding that in a lot of these variations, black ends up with play and white doesn't. Kind of remarkable, huh?
Yeah, I'd say that's really a big difference in my play since I've been taking lessons with you.
Mm-hmm.
Is the idea of equalize with black and then do something. I used to just come out of the gates and try to end it,
Right.
Get hit in the side of the head.
Sure. Yeah.
I've been a lot more successful with black, just thinking about just trying to get a good game here, and then lo and behold, things happen. You get everything developed.
Right.
So.
But there's no way for white to exploit this opening. The Fred is entirely sound. There are some lines of it that are more critical that I still haven't covered. Let me just reset this. I want to get rid of that PGN that I still haven't covered and addressed. But there's one other critical line, and that's bishop b5. Now, what do you think you do as white or black here? That's an interesting choice. I don't play it because I think black has a better move. The answer is probably there's nothing wrong with it. If there's nothing wrong with it, it provides a fallback in case something ends up getting refuted. See, there's a way for black to get a winning game here really quick if white's not careful. And I've actually had it happen. Okay, you take the pawn. Now naturally they're going to play here, right? Now you've got problems. This knight is loose. So the key move now is to play queen d5. Now suddenly black has a fork. Now what white will do is play this move. If he then check, and I always have trouble with this line. I always forget it and I have to stop and think about it to do it exactly. Because you have to do this precise. G6. Now white takes. Now, like I say, you have to do this precisely. If you don't do it precisely, you mess the game up. And so there's, I believe the move, like I say, I never remember this. Okay, I think the key move is to play this. Now, the first trick you have to watch out for is something like this move. But you come out a piece ahead. Okay, but there's some of these themes that come up. That's why you have to do this precisely. See, if you stop and give check first, you might run into a check. And after king here, now the knight's pinned. But white can save it in two ways, and you got to be careful. So knight f6 is the first move. Now, whoops, let me back this up. I'm pretty sure knight f6 is the key move. Okay, knight takes g6, knight f6. Okay, where does white put his queen? There's two moves and neither of them works. Okay, there's h4 and there's h3. So let's look at them both. If h4, you have queen takes g2. Yeah, that's it. This is right. Now, if white takes the rook on h8, he loses his rook on h1, and it gets very messy. And black will come out of this smelling like a rose. So that leaves this move. Now you get this check in. And the king has to move. I got to make sure I do this right. I remember, is it f4 here? I think it's f4. Okay, now the queen's loose. And yeah, this is it. You're attacking the queen and you're attacking the knight. There it is. See, I always have trouble remembering this. It's just there's just something about a block in my head. But f4 is the key move here, and white's losing a piece. Isn't that nifty?
Yeah, that's worth memorizing.
Yeah. So knight f6 is the key move. You have to be careful because you have all these possible checks, but you have to do them in the right order. And if you don't do them in the right order, you run into some trouble. So remembering it can sometimes be tricky. So what happens in this position? What white has to do is white has to play knight f3. That's what it boils down to. White has to play knight f3. d4 just isn't enough because queen takes g2. I've got some old games out of these. I know I've got games. If you want to see them, just ask them. I know where they are at. I remember 1991. I was playing in this thing, Pacific Southwest Open, and he was either a low expert or a high A player, and I played this line against him. The guy, he was all pissed off because I played this garbage opening against him and slaughtered him, and he couldn't believe that I could play such a shitty opening and wipe him out.
Well, you know what I've learned? Someone once said there are three results in chess: 1-0, 0-1, and draw.
I think I've run in right.
Doesn't matter.
I think I've run into d4, and then they've bailed out with this move. Then they might have thrown a check in first on h5 and allowed me to get g6 in. I'm pretty sure I've run into this. That might be the game that I'm talking about. It went like this. I mean, I could step away. But I'm not. I got all my scorebooks in one place, but I have to take some time looking through them. But I can show you these games. It'll back up everything we're doing. But again, the double pawn means nothing. Black's got the bishop pair. But what they have to play here is oops. What they have to play here is this, and now black gets bang e5 in, and yeah, you can tickle the queen, but the queen is fine. The queen's totally fine on d6. And once you seal the e-file, here I'll show you why. You've got to be careful about the e-file. See, white's threatening to play knight takes e5, right? Okay, so you just shut the file down, just bishop e7, and bang, black's okay. I have to sneeze a second. Thank you. Okay, I'm allergic to chess. No, I'm just kidding. All right. All right, so there's one little intricacy in here that I didn't show you yet. What happens if white plays this check first? It makes a difference. Mouse is not cooperating. You'll see it on the recording. It's hovering the mouse over H4. I'm trying to move it to G6. I'm not sure if I sent you last week's video or not. I just had such a crazy week. Okay. The difference is that if black can't really go out and take that bishop. Okay. I think I finally gave up on this and ran an evaluation on a computer years ago, and it came up that the game is a dead draw. You end up getting some kind of a draw by repetition here. You can't stop and take that bishop, and then you also have to watch out, if I remember, knight c3 coming in at the wrong time because it gains a tempo. So if you're going in for the same stuff, so you don't have time to take the bishop now because knight takes h7 is check. So knight f6. Now, like I say, there's now on queen h3. Let's see, queen check. Now, is there a difference? Because you're going to play f4 next, right? And be on the knight. Now, let's see. Trying to remember if see, I haven't looked at this in years. What I determined was that that the game becomes a draw. But how does it become a draw? Only by a repetition. See, a zero evaluation on a computer doesn't mean it's a draw. You can still play. I'm trying to recreate this. And I think it's good to try to analyze it on your own and not use the computer to show you, because you've heard my argument for not using an engine for analysis, haven't you? Yeah, you stop looking. Okay, so let's see, queen e4 check. Now, if queen e3, you trade queens and pick up the knight. So let's move the king. Let's try him on d1. Now you play f4. And, here's the difference. Bishop d3. See, that's a move that's not available when the knights are, I think this is it. Now you got to get your queen. Well, you take his queen, he takes your queen. Let's see, let's try it. Take the queen, take the queen. Well, I've got a threat on f2. But then that king could have gone to f1. And for what it's worth, black's up a piece at the moment. Let's put the king on f1. Now f4. I'm just wondering about this move. So let's see. We took the queen. And you have to take the queen. Now, black's up a piece. Black's up two pieces. Maybe this doesn't work. I don't remember it. It's kind of fun to try to figure these things out. Let's see. Black's up two pieces. Wait a minute. Black's up a piece, but it's white on move. Knight takes f4. The bishop just retreats. If takes here. So bishop d3 doesn't, it's kind of like a little decoy. Black's okay out of this. But there's some reason why this doesn't work. And I'll be damned if I can remember it. Maybe it's this move. Knight check. Okay. Of course, we have to ask ourselves, what's the difference? The difference between this knight check and the other knight check is the queen is not protected on d5. When the bishop trades, it was protected by a pawn. Remember that? Okay, so now when knight takes queen, now white's just a pawn ahead, right? And white's got a threat. So it might be that okay, knight f6, knight f4 discovered check. Well, we're going to lose our queen unless we block the check or take his queen, right? So we looked at knight takes d5. What about queen f7? So I'm not seeing the draw here. Unless we can't play knight f6 because of this. So knight f6, you have to play knight f6 to the other line. You can't stop and do the check. What if we do the check now? If I check on e6, well, it might block with e5. What if I check here? Now you don't have to move your king. You now have bishop e2. Now I try knight f6. Now, queen h4. The point is, if I trade your queen, then I can take it back. Man, this is confusing. I wish I could remember all this. I knew there was some, when you said a couple hours ago you wanted to do the Fred declined, I knew there was a lot to it. You don't expect to learn it in one session. You're playing a lot. You're playing a lot in Blitz. Like I say, I played hundreds of these games. I need to get in there and collect them. I just need they're all in my collection of games at ICC. I just need to get in there and collect them. And they're played in 1-minute games, 3-minute games, 5-minute games, not to mention a number of tournament games. But
yeah, hey, that gives me a really good start on it. Even just that d6 is great, because I guess reflexively I've been playing e6 and then just getting locked up, and that looks a lot better against his e5 push.
Let's see. So e5, you're playing e6.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you shouldn't. It should be okay move. It should be. But let's see. You don't have f6 for your knight. Your bishop's on c8's kind of bad. If he plays d4, you don't really have a good square for your bishop. You're not ready to play pawn to c5. But what's remarkable, like I say, when you get into this position, I think psychologically, even though white knows he has queen h5 check, he's not willing to leave that bishop loose on b5. But he can't, as I recall, according to the engine, white can get away with queen h5 check, and white can get away with it. And there's certain things that change, but I don't quite remember them.
But yeah, 99% of people are going to play bishop takes knight or knight takes knight.
Right. Well, knight.
Just because it's too scary to sit there.
Right.
Yeah.
uh, but you've seen the method, what to do.
Yeah.
Let's see. So let's see. We still have some time. Let me give you a